Ying is a broke security guard who is on track to dying alone with a shady browser history. However, when he accidentally kisses a magical girl to save her life, he absorbs half of her powers. Now the only way they can get stronger is to start clapping. It all begins on a stormy night when Ying heads upstairs to investigate the cause of a power outage at his security job. When he arrives on the rooftop, he spots a girl named Mizu controlling the weather with a spell called Heavenly Tribulation. Immediately, Mizu sees Ying and gets distracted, causing a lightning bolt to strike her down. Quickly, Ying rushes over to help, but recalls Andrew Tate's lessons and decides to let her die. However, when he spots the size of her melons, he decides she's worth saving, so he gives her a mouth-to-mouth, making Mizu suddenly glow. Just then, Mizu wakes up and slaps the degeneracy out of him. In his defense, Ying says he sacrificed his first kiss to save her, but Mizu says he stole her first kiss, too. Hearing this, Ying says they're now even, but Mizu angrily hands him another stroke to his other cheek. After, Mizu walks away, hoping they never meet again, but she feels relieved that Ying didn't get to see her Heavenly Tribulation and what it's capable of. Suddenly, she feels her powers leak out and wonders why her cultivation regressed to its previous levels. Meanwhile, in Ying's apartment, some blue energy fields appear around him in his sleep, making nearby objects levitate. The next day, Ying wonders what's going on with him, since he's developed supervision overnight, but then, he spots Mizu being harassed by a simp suitor and realizes why she has anger issues. Suddenly, an eye appears in the sky planning to test the new cultivator in the area, so it drops a billboard from the top of a building. While everyone flees, Ying rushes to save a lady who's about to get crushed by the billboard and unconsciously shoots off a beam that blows up the billboard. However, Ying gets exhausted by this, collapses, and passes out. A few moments later, he awakens and finds himself tied up on a bed with Mizu staring at him with eyes so hungry she's biting her lips. When he tries to break free, Mizu gets on him and prepares to take him for a midnight test drive. However, when Ying's engine refuses to come on, Mizu aborts the mission and states that she intends to take back what he stole from her. When Ying wonders what she means, Mizu reminds him of how he saved the girl in the street using her powers. Ying remains confused and asks why he has her powers. In response, Mizu reveals that she's a cultivator. But when Ying laughs it off, like she's got some screws loose, she suddenly draws a lightning blade and gives Ying the option to either die under her black sky or cultivate with her and become immortal. Afterwards, while they ride the lift, Ying comments on how beautiful the city looks at night, but Mizu explains that beauty is only limited to the surface, and the city is full of dark places. Ying then asks if she knows what happens in the dark parts, but Mizu says she has no idea. So Ying decides it's better to focus on the bright side of things and help those in dark places with his power. Shortly after, they arrive on top of a rooftop where Mizu tells Ying to jump if he wants to level up fast, since people usually gain powerful strength when threatened with death. However, Ying complains that it might fail, but Mizu assures him that he'll merely make the headlines the next day. To further convince him, Mizu states that he's naive and will get snuffed out by other cultivators soon if he refuses to awaken through the jump. Hearing this, Ying moves to the edge of the building roof, but suddenly starts getting second thoughts. So, Mizu grabs him and pushes him off the building rooftop. While he falls, Mizu tries to activate his superpowers but fails and suddenly hears Dumb Ways to Die playing in the background. Suddenly, Mizu jumps after him, and when she catches him mid-flight, she announces that they're going to die together. Just when they're about to crash into the floor, Ying suddenly grows a pair of wings and safely lands before taking off back to the sky. While they hover in the sky, Mizu blushes on seeing his aura, but when Ying starts feeling funky, stating how he could now boycott air travel expenses, Mizu gets furious and suddenly grows some wings. She then pulls him down and slams him onto the top of a building while explaining that their lives as cultivators thrive on their existence in the dark, and his desire to show off might put every other cultivator at risk. So Mizu strangles Ying while saying he's better off dead, but she suddenly takes her hands off his neck and tells him that he'll have bigger problems when next he exposes himself. Somewhere in a different dimension, a master named Huang senses fluctuations in spirit energy, so he orders his apprentice, named Yu, to find the owner of the power fluctuations and quietly try his strength. If he's a weakling, Yu was ordered to snuff him out. The next day, Ying walks Mizu back to her house, eyeing her like a candy he can't wait to unwrap. Then, they bump into Zhao, the simp from the other day, smoking like he's trying to break Khalifa's record. Zhao then welcomes Mizu and reveals that he's been waiting all day to take her to the movies, but Mizu suggests they reschedule since she's exhausted from recreating 50 Shades of Grey with Ying at a hotel. Shocked, the simp gets furious and tries to bash Ying's face in, but Mizu quickly intervenes and threatens to crush his family jewels. She then states that only she can beat her man before they take their leave. Shortly after, while they hang out, Mizu freaks out when she spots Ying holding a device that belongs in a museum, along with other artifacts. When she furiously states that they can't chat with the bomb detonator that he calls a phone, Ying says they can text instead. Just then, Mizu takes out a smartphone and hands it to Ying, moving him to tears as he suddenly falls in love. After this, Ying reminds Mizu of the comment about the powerful hunting the weak ones and asks why Mizu hasn't clapped him yet. In response, Mizu explains that he absorbed most of her spirit energy and she would lose them permanently if he dies. She then adds that she's only cultivating with him because spirit energy is transferred through a unique method of her family. Just when she turns to leave, Ying says he's got one more question and whispers in her ear to ask if they could cultivate at night. Mizu then asks if he's serious, but Ying chickens out and says he'd be right back. However, while he walks away, Mizu grabs his hands and says they can start by holding hands. At this point, Ying realizes he's found the girl of his dreams. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Yue gets busy popping heads just for the fun of it and enjoys the taste of blood. The next day, Yu arrives at the spot where the spirit energy fluctuation first appeared, and while she scans through the people around, she figures it must be from a man. While she wonders how to find him when there are a lot of them, she spots a Gunner's Fest going on nearby and hates sharing the same air with men. Suddenly, she gets an idea and decides to find her target by offering premium content for free on OnlyFans. While she thinks out loud about how men will kneel before her skirt, a geek passing by reminds her that she's wearing hot pants and not a skirt. Before he finishes his speech, Yue ruins his dentition with her elbow and tells him to mind his business while everyone watches in horror. A few moments later, Yue starts going on dates with the idiots she pulled from her OnlyFans page and ends up sending them to the hospital, since they've got baby stores that need emptying instead of spiritual energy. Afterwards, she wonders why her dancing seduction spell keeps pulling the wrong guys and suddenly realizes that her target might be interested in something other than fannies, so she decides to try a different approach. Later at night, while Ying chats with the love of his life, his bunkie, named Lee, suddenly starts laughing like an idiot, talks about meeting a cute boy he's been chatting with at the park. When the fatso suddenly stands and leaves the room like he's on autopilot, Ying figures something is definitely wrong and hops off his bed. While his zombified roomie leaves, Ying recalls how the organ traffickers have been stealing people's kidneys through one-night stands, so he grabs his shirt and quietly goes after Lee until they arrive at the park, where Lee finds Yue dressed as a boy. Suddenly, Yue casts a spirit detection spell on Lee, but is disappointed when she finds out he's got no spiritual energy. So she turns to leave, but since he's still jinxed by her spell, Lee won't stop following her. So she restores his factory settings with an uppercut that sends him flying. Eager to join the Marvel crew, Ying takes off with his wings and catches Lee before he drops and splashes fat all over the place. Seeing this, Yue gets excited that her efforts have finally yielded results, and at the same time, Lee suddenly begins to see Ying differently. So, he gets all mushy with Ying, who then gets creeped out and throws him to the ground. Despite this, Lee clings tightly to Ying, saying he'd like to sample his popsicle. Just then, Yu removes her dancing seduction spell, and when Lee comes back to his senses, he asks Ying why they're hugging. So, Ying narrates everything that happened, but when he turns to show Lee his date, Yue is gone. While Yue watches them from a tree nearby, Lee tells Ying not to be shy with him, since he's got some expertise with baby oil. Hearing this, Ying runs off, saying he's got some emergency to attend to, and blames himself for being too handsome. On his way to find Muzi, he suddenly gets stunned by an attack from Yue, who then casts the dancing seduction on him. Just then, Ying gets zombified and starts chanting his love confession for Yue. A few moments later, he arrives at a rooftop after following Yue. So Yu casts a spirit restriction spell to prevent other cultivators from locating them, but Ying is too busy rizzing her up to notice. Suddenly, he gets on his knee and proposes to Yue with some sticks of roast beef he baked on his way. While Yu gets stunned by this, Ying bites some off and offers to feed them to her through a kiss, but Yu hits him with an unfriendly left-hand hook before removing the dancing seduction. When he comes back to his senses, Ying asks Yu a barrage of questions about what's going on, and she tells him about how he's been making her knees weak with his impeccable Riz game. On hearing this, Ying dreads what would happen if Muzi finds out, but when Yu draws out a lightning blade to unalive him, Ying realizes she's a cultivator. He then recalls Muzi's warning and decides to escape, so he distracts Yue and takes off with his wings. Unfortunately, Yu suddenly appears behind him and grabs his pants before slamming him onto the rooftop, leaving his pants in her hands. Creeped out by the sight, Yu calls him a man of culture and tries to unalive him, but a bolt of lightning suddenly stops her. On looking up, she spots Muzi floating in the air, ready to rock and roll. Just when Muzi scolds Ying for taking off his pants before another girl, Yue laughs at them and reveals that Ying has been begging her to marry him since her cookie is more delish. Quickly, Ying tries to debunk this, but Mazi tells him to kneel while she deals with Yue. Some minutes later, while Ying watches the ladies go head-to-head, Ying comments about the two hot ladies fighting over him. On hearing this, the ladies state that nobody will ever fight over him and jointly try to rip his mouth apart, so Ying apologizes, but they still knock some sense into him. Afterwards, the ladies resume their quarrel, and Muzi informs Ying through telepathy that they'll now be communicating that way. Meanwhile, Yue mocks both of them, pointing out that Muzi's power is on the mid-stage of key condensation, while Ying's power is still on the early stage of foundation establishment. Furious at them, Yu questions their audacity to release spiritual energy in public with such a low-level cultivation. Just then, Mizu reminds Ying of one of her lectures about the various stages of cultivation. She had explained that the levels have a vast difference, which can only be bridged if he has a special weapon. She had stated that it's the only way he could survive when attacked by a high-level cultivator. Just then, Yue somehow figures that they're communicating through telepathy and attacks so violently that Ying realizes she's in the late stage of foundation establishment. But Muzi draws her lightning sword to block her attacks and realizes they don't stand a chance against Yue, even if Ying helps. Despite this, Muzi holds her ground, clashing swords with Yue. Suddenly, Yue fires off a burst of flames at Muzi, but she vanishes, surprising Yue, who then looks around for her. Muzi then descends from above and blasts Yue off her feet. Quickly, Muzi tells Ying to leave first while she follows after. Watching them play the romantic tragedy annoys Yue more, so she unleashes a flaming whip, and as they charge towards each other, Muzi gets struck by the whip. Without giving her a chance to recover, Yu grabs her throat, takes her higher into the sky, and tosses her back down on the rooftop. The moment Muzi lands on the roof, Yu lands with her and thrashes her badly with the flaming whip. When Muzi finally gathers her strength to stand, Yue raises her lightning sword to summon a flaming twister and attack Muzi with it. Luckily, Muzi casts a defense restriction spell to counter the attack, but as she bleeds from being overwhelmed, she figures she can't hold it much longer. Meanwhile, Ying fearfully runs down the stairs, hoping Muzi joins him soon and wondering if they'll ever get to cultivate with the styles he learned on Cornhub. Just then, it occurs to him that there's no way Muzi can win the fight, considering the difference in their abilities, so he sits feeling dejected. Somewhere else, Yue's master stands, surrounded by drained bodies in a forest, with bloody hands. He then fantasizes about feasting on Yue's blood and breaking into the next stage of power when she finishes her mission. Back on the rooftop, Muzi gets exhausted from holding off Yue's attack and gets blown away. While she struggles to get back up, Yue moves closer with her sword and tells Muzi to hate Ying for abandoning her and running, but Muzi refuses and states that loners like Yu can't understand. Annoyed by this, Yu raises her sword to end Muzi, but Ying suddenly rushes in between them and gets stabbed. Upon seeing this, Muzi catches Ying as he falls and asks why he returned. In response, Ying states that she can't defeat Yue and adds that he won't let her die alone. While Yue stands nearby watching like a villain, Mizu flashes back to her mother's teachings about her choice of partner. Her mother had stated that her man must be capable of taking care of her and protecting her from getting hurt. So, Mizu clings to Ying and tearfully says that she's glad she met him, but Yue kicks Ying off her arms. Despite this, Mizu crawls over to him and begs him to stay alive, but Yu walks over and kicks her too. Seeing this, Ying blacks out and appears in the afterlife, where he finds some dude who informs him that he was brought there by mistake. So, Ying asks the guy if he's the guy who takes people to paradise, but the guy introduces himself as Swan. Suddenly, Swan draws a dark sword and splits a planet with it. Just then, Ying identifies the sword as Dark Sky, surprising Xuan that he recognizes it. Xuan then wonders how their spirit energies originated from the same source, even when Ying doesn't have his clan's blood, and figures that Ying must be clapping one of his offspring. Hearing this, Ying thinks Xuan must be one of Muzi's ancestors and introduces himself as Muzi's husband. Impressed, Xuan decides to reward Muzi with a special fortune with his cultivation and tosses some beads at him. Xuan then explains that he got the Huntian beads many years ago and left something in them that might help him. Since he's running out of spiritual energy, Xuan says that the beads can only deal with Ying's current situation and adds that he'll only last 1 minute. As Xuan ascends, Ying stops him to ask a question, but Xuan simply tells him he'll regain his powers when he wakes up. Just then, Xuan disappears, before Ying asks how to use the beads. Back on the rooftop, Muzi weeps beside Ying's body, but when Yu tries to eliminate her, a beam of light suddenly hits the rooftop from the sky and dispels Yu immediately. On looking closer, Yu spots Ying looking different and floating with Muzi in his arms. When the beam powers down, Yu wonders where the incredible spirit power comes from, since it's tremendous and still rapidly growing. But since she can't fight Ying with her current level of strength, she backs into a wall, wishing it would swallow her. Worried she might be dying soon, Yue compares Ying's current power level to her master's and figures they must be a match. Suddenly, she summons her fire whip and attacks Ying while dreading the outcome. But Ying stands unfazed and simply points a finger and shatters her weapon with a spell. As a result, Yu drops to the floor like a sack of potatoes. When she gets back up, she bleeds and realizes all hope is lost along with her weapon. So she backs up against the rooftop railing and decides to die on her own terms, but to her surprise, she falls into Ying's arms. Ying then says she could have just run since she only lost a fight, but when he carries her back to the rooftop and drops her, Yu pushes him off and says that weaklings like him know nothing about the world's cruelty. After Yue angrily walks off, Muzi tells him to leave her, since everyone has secrets they deal with, and pulls Ying's ears to ask about what sorcery he just pulled off before her eyes. Suddenly, Ying freaks out and brags about how he has always wanted to farm aura while the ladies watch, but Muzi knocks the drama out of his head, leaving it hot and swollen. She then grabs Ying by his collar and suggests they go somewhere, but Ying protests, saying it's midnight and he's tired. Shortly after, they find themselves in Muzi's room, where she questions Ying on how his spirit power suddenly increased, so Ying makes up a story of how he prayed and summoned God to get his powers. But since she's not buying any of it, Muzi realizes it's also a mystery how he absorbed her spirit powers, so she cracks her knuckles and approaches Ying while threatening to improvise. A few moments later, Ying finds himself tied up again with Muzi above him. Scared, he asks what she's up to this time, and Muzi says she's about to show him the co-cultivation method of her family. Suddenly, she kisses him and tells him to relax while explaining that the co-cultivation method reconciles their yin and yang by letting power cycle through their bodies. As their energies align, Ying feels their spirit power fuse together and feels warm while everything hidden gets exposed. Shortly after, Ying finds himself in a weird place and looks around to find Muzi, but instead, he finds a door standing without walls and approaches it. When he touches the lock, light suddenly floods out of the door and engulfs him. Suddenly, the scenery around him changes, and he spots droplets of blood dripping off a flower petal. A younger version of Mizu then tugs on his sleeve, looking sad. While he wonders what's going on, the scenery around them changes again, but this time, they fall into a wormhole. At the same time, Muzi swims through Ying's consciousness, looking for signs that might hint that their spirit energy is from the same origin. However, she suddenly encounters a ball of energy that immobilizes her, but on looking closer, she figures it's a living weapon. Suddenly, Muzi finds herself in an old memory where she's surrounded by blood and many bodies. Unknown to her, a man with an evil aura stands on a roof nearby and draws his sword to finish her off. In the same memory, Ying awakens and finds himself surrounded by flames and bodies, so he hears someone calling for help and rushes there to pull off a Chidori. However, when he bursts through the door, he finds a wounded woman begging the man with the evil aura. The man then asks about the black sky before finishing off the woman. Afterwards, Ying wakes in the real world to find Muzi weeping beside him, and since he discovered she's got a really sad past, he decides to protect her. Shortly after, Muzi explains that her family had 34 descendants in the modern cultivation world, but they were all slain by the man who was after the dark sky, leaving her as the only survivor. She then draws out the dark sky and vows to avenge her dead relatives whenever she meets the man again. Curious, Ying asks about his level and asks if they could take him on by combining strengths, but Muzi reveals that the man has reached the highest cultivation level. Muzi then states that if they were to meet the man in a fight, they would die for sure. So, Ying holds Muzi's hands and promises to help her, since they're a couple in co-cultivation. While he laughs to feel less awkward, Mizu plants a kiss on his cheek, making Ying realize he won in life. Before he finishes reveling in the moment, Mizu gives him a mean look and tells him it's his reward for saving her. Afterwards, Ying decides to tell Mizu about his spirit power, but she stops him while explaining that although she didn't see it in his consciousness, it made her feel a familiar warmth she hasn't felt in a long time. Suddenly, Muzi says she wants to sleep and throws Ying out after using him, and just then, he realizes he has to be on patrol at his job. On his way back, Ying sings about his loneliness and suddenly gets relieved that Mizu didn't discover the Huntian beads. He then checks his pocket for it and freaks out when he can't find it. When he arrives in his room, Lee gives him an earful about calling girls over at such a young age. Just then, he spots Yue on his bed, dressed to end his life, and suddenly bleeds from his nose. When he asks Yue why she's on his bed, Yue says that he must have forgotten her, but Ying says he remembers her and asks why she's dressed like an escort. In response, Yu lifts her milk cannons and says she needs a favor from him. Alarmed, Ying waves his hands in surrender and tells her to go easy on him. Yue then reveals that she's got nowhere else to sleep and suggests that she sleep in his bed. Just when Ying thinks of refusing, Yue uncovers her magical orbs to convince him, and like magic, Ying starts thinking of where to sleep. So, Lee quickly throws an arm around Ying and suggests they sleep together for the night, but Ying finds this disgusting, so he decides to sleep on the floor while Lee messes with him. The next day, a dumb loser proposes to Yue with a wilted flower, and while she plays hard to get, an alpha male kicks off the idiot since there's an endless queue of guys who'd give their nuts to sniff her armpits. While the loser weeps, Yue gets exhausted and laments about the side effects of the dancing seduction. Suddenly, a dude pulls up, speeding in with his ride and almost eliminates his fellow simp. When he steps out of the car, it turns out it's Zhao, so he splashes some cash on the other guy's face to to shut him up. Just then, Muzi emerges from a nearby building and spots Yue in the midst of the chaos and wonders why she's there. Suddenly, Zhao takes out a diamond ring and offers it to Muzi, but when she says it likely belongs to you, Zhao says he'd rather dive into a volcano. He then asks Mizu to go out with him on a date, but Muzi says that he can only qualify to be her man if he's willing to protect and care for her. Taunting to Yue, Mizu states that thirsty girls like her are more suitable for him, but hearing this, Yue decides to raise her standards too. Just then, the rejected simp offers to give her the whole world, but Yue knocks him out and states that she only wants Ying. At that moment, Ying walks in like a zombie, worried about how to explain his situation to Muzi. But when he arrives on the scene, Muzi suggests they go watch a movie together. Quickly, Yue throws her melons at Ying and says she'd also like to see a movie with him. Annoyed by this, Muzi accuses Yu of trying to snatch her man, but Yue says that Ying belongs to her, and they begin to drag him. Seeing this, the other boys suddenly start vomiting blood out of jealousy, including the Zhao, who then vows to write his name upside down if he fails to make Ying pay. Later, at the movies, Ying discovers that the ladies are more focused on each other than the movie. When the movie gets scary, Muzi clings tightly to Ying, annoying Yue, who then accuses her of acting. To get back at her, Yue kisses Ying on his cheek, and on seeing this, Muzi decides to do the same. Unknown to them, Ying has slid down his chair, and both ladies end up kissing each other, giving the dudes at the back a better movie they won't forget in a lifetime. After the movie, they step out, and it suddenly begins to rain, so Ying takes off his jacket. But before he's done, both ladies drag his jacket and end up ripping it apart while he falls to the ground. Since he got wet, Ying begins to shiver and blames the gods of the plot for adding too much spice to his love life. The next day, Ying gets a present from Muzi, and on his way to deliver his present, Zhao and a crew of hired hooligans stand along his path. When he gets closer to them, Zhao accuses Muzi of snatching his woman and threatens to unalive him. He then orders the thugs to break his limbs and Muzi's favorite instrument. So the thugs get in his way and try to knock his brains out with clubs, but Ying distracts them and runs off. Quickly, the thugs run after him, but when someone trips him, he falls and drops his present box. Coincidentally, Yue and Muzi show up on the scene and rush in to knock out the thugs. Just then, the other thugs decide to attack the ladies instead. Muzi sends one flying with a punch, while Yue crushes another's berries with a kick. After they're done with the thugs, the ladies hurry over to ask Ying to ask if he's hurt, leaving Zhao so heartbroken that he spits blood again. He then begins to weep since he'll have to write his name upside down as promised, but his guard assures him his name won't change if he does that. Meanwhile, Ying says he's fine and feels relieved that the gift box didn't break from the fall. So he presents the gift to Muzi, and when she opens it, she finds some ugly gloves inside. Feeling accomplished, Ying says it's his first time, and when he asks if she likes it, Muzi turns her back at him, leaving him confused. Meanwhile, Yue sees this and takes her leave, looking dejected. But unknown to her, her master observes this from a rooftop nearby and hopes she doesn't disappoint him. Afterwards, while Ying and Mizu walk together, Mizu blushes about the gift while Ying explains that he's always felt bad for not giving her presents. Just then, they spot Yue walking alone up ahead, but since this reminds Ying of his old self, he seeks Mizu's permission, and when she grants it, he runs over to meet Yue, who then asks what he wants. He then offers her a handshake of friendship and insinuates that, despite their differences, they ended up watching a movie together. However, Yu knocks off his hand and states that she would have put him and his girlfriend 6 feet under if he hadn't gotten the power boost the other day. In addition to this, Yu states that she only got close to him because he's powerful and able to protect her from danger. Despite this, Ying insists and offers to protect her, but Yue angrily asks if Muzi ordered him to provoke her. Young then says that she misunderstood Mizu and explains that Mizu is bearing the burden of losing her entire family, and since she's alone just like them, she feels lonely too. Hearing this, Yue says she thought Mizu was an arrogant blue blood, but Ying says she's only putting up a front to mask her suffering. When Ying adds that he is the only one Mizu trusts enough to lean on, Yu figures it must be why Ying is so determined to protect her. Ying then grabs Yue and vows to do his best to protect her also, since they're now friends. Suddenly, Yue gets emotional and runs off. But before Ying goes after her, Mizu stops him and says he'll make her jealous if he does too much. Later that night, in an empty classroom somewhere in school, some students try to fulfill their classroom fantasy. But just as things were about to get moist and steamy, Yue's master freaks them out and ruins the moment. He then scolds them for making him bust one in the middle of cultivation. But the male student suddenly grows balls the size of the moon and attacks the master for interrupting them. However, the master easily lifts him off the ground and breaks his neck. Shocked by this, the lady screams, but he somehow shuts her down too. He then activates a forbidden method of cultivation known as the fiend art while thinking of feasting on Yue, whom he has raised over the years. Shortly after, Yue arrives at the dimension where she meets her master, thinking of what to say to prevent her master from ending her for good. Just then, her master arrives with the bodies of the students and asks her about her mission. In response, Yue confesses that she failed and apologizes while explaining that Mizu got very powerful and she couldn't defeat him. So, her master reveals that he has reached another breakthrough point by absorbing blood from his victims and adds that he'll hunt Ying and Mizu by absorbing their blood in 10 days' time. After this, he reveals that he'll soon attain the late stage of core formation, surprising Yue while he laughs maniacally. So he orders Yue to hold them off and prevent them from finding out about his existence before dismissing her. As she flaps her wings and leaves, Yue figures she'll also become her master's prey if he perfects his fiend art. Later that night, Ying heads into a forest and calls out for Yue, but she suddenly appears behind him and calls him. Surprised, Ying asks why she summoned him into a forest and is dressed like a working girl. In response, Yue asks if he doesn't like her outfit and unleashes her Giga Melons, which terrifies Ying. So when she approaches him, offering to show him everything underneath, Ying shuts his eyes and says he can't betray his babe. Annoyed, Yu draws her sword and attacks Ying, but when he blocks it, she tries to hack him into a million pieces, but Ying evades every one of her slashes while begging her to hear him out. However, Yui kicks him into a tree and slices through the tree. Luckily, Ying ducked to save his head, but Yu suddenly charges up and tells Ying to defend himself using his spirit energy, but Ying says he'll never fight against a friend. Suddenly, Yue fires up her sword and tries to run him through, but gives up in the last second since he doesn't evade the attack. At this point, Yue breaks down in tears and asks if he has a death wish. When she asks why he didn't fight back, Ying says that his spirit energy is meant for protecting her and pats her on the head. At that moment, Yu sees someone else in Ying, but Muzi shows up and tells Ying to be grateful she's not a jealous psychopath. Quickly, Ying lets go of Yue's hair while she reveals that her master will eliminate them even if she doesn't, so Ying says it's why they'll need her help. In response, Yui insinuates that they're too trusting and reveals that her master felt the release of their spirit energy when they exposed themselves. Just then, Ying figures that her master must have sent her to test them through fighting, while Mizu chips in that they're all pawns in her master's little game, and regardless of who wins the fight, her master's plans will work out. On hearing this, Ying states that Yue's master must be one crazy dude, and to make matters worse, Yue states that he'll soon attain the middle stage of core formation, after which he'll wipe them all out. Meanwhile, Yue's master just finished feasting on another head, and figures he just needs Ying and Mizu's blood to compress 10 years worth of cultivation time. Back in the forest, after they cook up a plan, Ying disapproves of it, since it's against the moral code for Yue to go against her master, but Mizu steps forward and states that their teacher-student relationship ceased to exist the moment they started scheming behind each other's backs. Curious, Ying asks Yue if she's been training with her master from an early age, so Yue narrates her story, beginning with how she used to live in a small village where she helped her parents. One day, while she leaves home to pick firewood, her mom packs her lunch and they wave her goodbye. Shortly after, she overheard some bullies mocking her for making friends with a monster. So when they have her attention, the bullies stated that no one would ever be friends with her, annoying Yue, but she calmed herself. However, when stones suddenly start to hit her from all directions, she fights back and knocks down her bullies, telling them that her friend was not as stupid as they are. After the bullies ran off, Yue heads to a cave where she meets up with her friend, who's a snake girl. Suddenly, Yue took out a first aid kit, while the snake girl showed her a wound on her back. Yue then tended to the wound and handed her a medicine to help her heal better. After this, she opened her meal and shared it with the snake girl, wishing she would get well soon so that she could cultivate into human form, so that she could show everyone how deep their friendship is. Yue had thought they'd be friends forever, but one day, a fortune teller arrived in her village and wowed everyone with his abilities. However, Yue passed by, like his show was not worth watching, so the fortune teller tried to stop her, but she ignored him and walked along while the villagers talked ill about her to the fortune teller. Suddenly, the fortune teller spoke to her through telepathy and advised her to stay away from her monster friend, or she would be the reason Yue loses everything. However, Yue ignored his warning and headed to the cave while calling the fortune teller a liar, but on getting to the cave, she was shocked and hurried back to the village, where she found everything burning. Meanwhile, in the village, her snake friend cut down everyone, mercilessly spilling their blood and having fun while at it. So, Yu returned to the village and tried to find her parents, but when she did, they were already dead. While she weeps, the wounded fortune teller tells her that it's been decided by fate and nothing could have been done to avert it. So, Yue rushes over to the man, who then tells her that the snake spirit escaped into the forest before he dies. Vengeful, Yue headed into the forest with a sword, threatening to hack the snake spirit to pieces. But at the cave, she met Huang with his funny mustache, who then advised her against throwing her life away, but Yue insisted she must avenge her dead kinmen. Huang then apologized for showing up late and said she mustn't die, since she's the only survivor. Despite this, Yu rushed towards him and tried to get him out of her way with a stick, but fell to the ground after hitting hitting him. So, Huang revealed that snake spirits are stronger under a full moon and handed her a special weapon that can help her kill the monster. Afterwards, Yu followed the blood trails of the snake spirit and found her lying in a splash of blood. Annoyed, Yu accuses the snake spirit of betraying her and points the knife while asking why she did it. Suddenly, the snake girl slid towards her, making her fall in fear. But as the snake girl dashed towards Yu, she stabbed it with a knife. Just then, the snake girl collapsed into Yue's arms and called her friend for the first time. Moved to tears, Yue clung to the snake girl and cried her eyes out. Later, while she walked through the forest, she spotted Huang floating midair and guessed he must be an immortal. So she begged him to save her village people. But Huang explains that life, death, and reincarnation are all determined by the laws of heaven. Hurt, Yue says she's lost everything and asked the man what to do, and he patted her head before asking her to be his student on the road of cultivation. Yue then asks if he means she'll not feel her pain once she becomes an immortal, and the man assured her that cultivators have no feelings. Since then, Yue became her master's disciple in the cultivating path, but one day, she finds him using a bloodthirsty fiend art to improve his cultivation. Ever since then, her master has been watching her like a predator watching its prey. Yue then explains that the fiend art expands cultivation using normal people's blood. Hearing this, Muzi figures that Yue's master will attain the late stage of core formation by feasting on cultivators' blood. When Yue adds that they can't defeat Huang even with artificial weapons, Ying wonders how scary this master dude is. Yue then explains that if they wait too long, the master will perfect his fiend art and take their spirit energy by force. On hearing this, Ying grabs Muzi and suggests they run off to the Caribbean islands, and since the idea of making babies on a beach sounds good to Muzi, she agrees. Meanwhile, Yu fumes on the side and asks if they really think it's possible to hide from Zhao. Muzi then chips in that it'll be extremely difficult. Suddenly, Ying asks Muzi to transfer her spirit energy to him, so he can fight the master and sacrifice himself for Muzi to live happily. While they get all mushy, Ying asks if they can co-cultivate, but Yue ruins their moment and says the only way out of the cultivator world is through death. So, Ying asks if they're left with any other option, and Yu says that they have a chance if they work together. Ying then asks if she really plans to rebel against her master, but Yue says she knows that her death is near since her master has been craving her spirit energy for a while. However, Muzi points out that this might all be a trap, but Yue explains that her master hasn't perfected his fiend art yet, so they can strike him while his guard is down. When Mizu wonders how they'll pull that off, Yue reveals that the fiend art has a weakness, and they might stand a chance if her master falls into their trap. Later, in a hotel room, Ying reads the mood and thinks he'll be railing Mizu in every way possible that night, but to his shock, Mizu startles him with a knock to the head since she's pissed about him trying to play hero for Yue. However, Ying states that his father named him, hoping he would become a hero someday. Since it's decided, Mizu says they have to increase their chances of winning, and Ying suddenly lights up, suggesting they co-cultivate so they'll attain core formation. Alarmed, Muzi hides her oranges from his greedy eyes and says she's not ready for that yet. Surprised, Ying asks why they got a room then, and Muzi holds his hands and tells him that she saw a white light inside his consciousness world during their last co-cultivation. When Ying says it's likely a sign that he's super talented, Muzi says that the energy of the light is the same as with her family. In addition to this, she says that they might be able to defeat the old fart if they can harness the energy and use it successfully. So, Ying asks how they'll harness the energy, and Muzi explains that it might be similar to his spirit weapon, which can be released by cutting himself and forming a contract with the power. However, she warns him that the weapon spirits are powerful because they have their own consciousness and might take over him. However, he freaks out when he thinks of the effects that'll have on his co-cultivation plans with Muzi. Suddenly, Muzi knocks some sense into him and reminds him that the decision to let out the spirit is his to make. Ying then explains that releasing the spirit could help in their fight against Yu's master, but before he concludes, Muzi draws her sword and gives Ying a small cut on his hand. While he watches blood flow out, Muzi pours some spirit energy into the cut and summons the weapon spirit. Suddenly, a girl appears and accidentally lands her melons in Ying's hands. To his surprise, the girl calls him her master and asks Ying what he'll have her do. So, Muzi says she can tell that she has a high cultivation level, while Ying chips in that she can help them defeat Yu's master. The weapon spirit then confirms it, but adds that unleashing her full power requires an ascendant soul level, and with Ying's level, he could only summon her for a short time. So the girl vanishes, making Ying suggest that they co-cultivate again, but she says he can sleep over, but nothing like that will happen. Later that night, Ying sits in the bathroom, thinking the weapon spirit girl must be a throat goat as a high-level cultivator. So he takes out a knife and starts cutting himself to summon her, but forgets how it's done. The next day, Ying thinks of Yue's idea, which involves deliberately leaving trails of their escape while her master's fiend art is incomplete and luring him into a trap. Just then, Ying bumps into Zhao, who then offers to let him live if he gives Muzi back to him. In response, Ying says it's Muzi's choice, but Zhao insists no one can have her if he doesn't. So, Ying prepares to fight, and Zhao suddenly orders some fighters he hired to teach him pain. Fortunately, Muzi and Yue arrive to defend him against the fighters, who then suddenly identify their spirit weapons. Just then, the ladies realize that the attackers are weapon hunters, so the fight begins with Yue attacking, but the weapon hunters cast a spell that traps them and deactivates their abilities. Seeing this, Ying grows some balls and decides to take them on. However, after dodging the first attack from the hunters, he gets shot down with a magical arrow. The hunters then ask the ladies to hand over their spirit weapons, or they'll finish Ying off. When Ying tells them not to listen to him, the hunter tries to bash in his skull, but an explosion suddenly goes off on the scene, and Ying's spirit weapon appears to defend him. Quickly, Ying tells the girl to rescue Muzi and Yue, and when she does, the hunters get the thrashing of their lives. So, they apologize and beg for their lives to be spared. After the ladies let the hunters off the hook, the ladies scare off Zhao, and when Ying thanks them for saving him, they question him about some mischief he's been up to with his weapon spirit. Unknown to them, Yu's master is watching them from a rooftop nearby and gets excited about making them all sacrifices for his next upgrade. Some days later, Zhao runs into Ying and the ladies, but this time, his sight was set on Ying's weapon spirit, so he says he'd like some maidservants too, and his aide orders some immediately. Some moments later, while Zhao's maids massage him all over, Ying's weapon spirit massages his shoulder too. Just then, Muzi and Yu arrive, shocking Ying as they give him a pissed-off look that raises his temperature. Turning to Zhao, Muzi says nothing's going on between her and Ying and warns him to stop troubling Ying or face the wrath of her knuckles instead. On hearing this, Zhao runs off, weeping like an idiot, but ends up tripping over a stone. Shortly after, Yue stares long and hard at the weapon spirit's melons and wonders where she came from. The weapon spirit then explains that she's contracted to Ying, surprising Yue, who wonders how he trained her well in just one night. Just then, she recalls that Ying has a powerful cultivation weapon, but Ying merely laughs awkwardly since Xuan had warned him never to reveal their encounter to anyone, including Muzi. So he lies and says the weapon's spirit must be a gift from heaven. So, Yue asks the spirit for her name, but when she says she has none, Yue suggests they call her slave since she looks like one. This doesn't sit right with the spirit, so Ying suggests they name her Ling, and the spirit says she'll accept it if Ying likes it. Afterwards, Yu leaves to prepare the Yang Flame Array trap for her master, while Muzi says she's leaving to prepare but advises Ying to think of a way to escape when his life is at stake. While Ying wonders why they have zero confidence in him, Ling says he has to improve his cultivation level to prevent danger. When he blames himself for being weak, Ling comments that he has a good cultivation level but lacks combat capability. After this, Ling comments that Muzi must be worried about him, but Ying says he can't hide behind women forever, so Ling asks him to follow her as she opens up a portal and leads him through it. Unknown to them, Muzi was watching, so she wished that Ling would teach Ying a few escape tricks, since they didn't stand a chance against the core formation monster. On the other end of the portal, Ying and Ling arrive in a world inside the Huntian beads, and when he looks around, he marvels at the glowing plans and wonders how much space is inside the small ball of the beads. After this, Ling explains that there are countless miraculous weapon spirits in the cultivation world, and in addition, she reveals that she's an intelligent weapon spirit created by her original master using 10 kinds of unique treasures and sealed in a cold place with 10 years worth of pure spirit energy. Hearing this, Ying figures she must be really powerful, so Ling reveals that she has high cultivation levels, which can only be released depending on her master's level. Because of this, Ying must attain the early stage of the Ascendant Soul level to release her full ability. However, Ling is more concerned about knowing if she can eliminate a core formation stage monster, so Ling confirms that she can do that, but he'll never get to see her again. Curious, Ying asks if he'll have to offer her as a sacrifice, and Ling reveals that all it takes is for him to command her or do an awkward thing to her, and this would trigger a nuclear detonation, but on hearing this, Ying says he won't let her be used that way. However, he says he's bothered since he possesses more powerful spirit energy than Mizu, but can't avoid getting beaten up in a street fight. So, Ling explains to him that Cultivator's strength comes from the essence of heaven and earth, transforming into spirit energy, while his power comes from Muzi. She then points out that Ying has spirit energy but doesn't know how to use it, which explains why he gets nervous in battle. So, she says she's got a solution and undresses Ying. Surprised, Ying wonders if she's trying to co-cultivate with him, but he suddenly remembers the consequences of doing awkward things to her. So he freaks out, surprising Ling. So she gets him to sit and guides his spirit energy, but the idiot gets ticklish and laughs. Ling then tells him to stay calm, and when he does, his spirit energy comes alive and engulfs them both. Afterwards, he opens his eyes and, on checking his hand, he spots his spirit energy flicker and gets excited. But when Ling says it'll take a decade of cultivation for him to use the energy skillfully, Ying freaks out and says he doesn't have the time. Ling then offers to try another way, but warns that it'll be painful. Desperate, Ying tells her to go ahead. So, Ling sits behind him and pours her power into his body, burning Ying in the process. But since he figures his pain is nothing compared to Mizu and Yue's, he bears it and tells Ling to keep going. Some hours later, Ling finishes the process and commends Ying for taking it well, and just when they stand, Groot's distant cousin attacks them. However, Ying wastes no time blasting a hole through the tree as it collapses and vanishes. While Ying marvels at his newfound ability, Ling tells him that he can utilize the spirit energy transfer alongside the low-level art he has already obtained. When Ying figures out what she means, he unleashes his wings and takes off into the sky to celebrate. After Ying lands and Ling congratulates him, he asks why there's a tree spirit in the bead world. But Ling says that although she has stayed long in the Huntian bead, she doesn't know all its secrets. However, she states that she knows that in ancient times, there was a greater concentration of spiritual energy in the bead world than in the outside world. Curious, Ying wonders why there's so little spirit energy in recent times and figures that something significant must have happened in the past. Just then, Ying gets a call from Mizu, who then asks him to return and join her to prepare for the battle. However, when they arrive at the location, Ying almost chokes on his drink when he realizes they're at a self-love superstore. But Mizu tells him that it's a covert cultivation shop, and shortly after, when Ling joins them, she asks what adult products mean, and Ying explains that they're magical items used by elder cultivators. Shortly after, Ying and the others walk into the store, where the landlady informs the staff to entertain the guests well. Just then, they're welcomed by a guy who then asks what they need. To get the mood on, he calls for music, and while the music plays on, the dude gives off some pole dancer vibe and tells them to pick some products. Annoyed, Muzi blows the music setup, freaking the staff out as they realize that she's a cultivator. So they welcome them and inform Muzi that she just roasted a MacBook, but Muzi flings her card at them and tells them to put it on her account. When Muzi asks to see their boss, the staff melt on realizing it's a golden card. So they offered to take Muzi to see their boss while the others were told to stay out. Just the Muzi tosses a bag at Ying and tells him to look around before they converge outside later. On checking the bag, Ying finds some diamonds while Ling explains that it's a low-level spirit stone, which is the currency of the cultivation world. When Ying says that it looks like pearls, the receptionist figures he's a greenhorn and decides to finesse him. So she approaches Ying and asks him to check out the store's magical treasures. Hearing this, Ying figures it's about time he got a suitable weapon. Shortly after, the receptionist leads them into the store, and Ying immediately spots a cloak and assumes it'll make him fly. However, the receptionist states that it's a safeguard cloak that defends its user from attacks and adds that it costs 500 level spirit stones. She then offers a 20% discount if he's buying 3, but on checking the bag, Ying figures he has only 50 spirit stones to spend. Since he's a first-time customer, the receptionist says that the lowest priced item in their shop, even with a discount, is 300 spirit stones. A few moments later, Ying searches the store for what to spend his money on and eventually decides to save it for Muzi. Since Ying doesn't know the value of the spirit stones, the receptionist gets desperate to make him splurge them, so she informs him that the store can provide him with some chances to get high-value items. Curious, Ying asks her to tell him more, so the receptionist claims there's a game called Gamble Stone, which is played with jade and luck. She then further explains that the dug-up jades are covered with a weathered stone skin, hence no one knows the quality of the jade inside the stone. So, these original stones are used for gambling, and customers can buy them at a low price. Hearing this, Ying says he had no idea that a magical treasure could be used for gambling, so the receptionist leads them on while Ying asks Ling for her opinion. In response, Ling tells him to go for it, and the receptionist gets excited about making a fortune for the store. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the building, the store boss, Mei Maizi, scans Mizu's card to see if it's real and confirms that it's truly a card issued to the cultivation Li family. So, Mizu requests to take the most valuable magical treasure in the shop, but Mei Maizi says he'll have to take the card back in that case. After Muzi agrees, Mei Maizi goes to get the magical treasure, while his subordinate asks if it's really wise to give out the most powerful item. But Mei Maizi explains that the item isn't as useful as people think anymore, since the head office ordered all the branch offices to be shut down and to turn in the spirit stone magical treasures. He then reveals that none of the nominal treasures in the shop is the really important magical treasure. Curious, Mei Maizi's subordinate asks why the shops are being shut down, and Mei Maizi explains that someone who has something to do with Muzi's family might come for the stones. Meanwhile, the staff shows Ying and Ling a room full of boxes and explains that even the boxes alone are valuable, so it won't be bad even if they get the worst box. Ling assures Ying that she'll help him pick the best box and tells him to go ahead. So, Ying scans the room and spots an expensive-looking box. Just as he prepares to pick it, the staff gets worried, but Ying suddenly pauses and asks Ling to pick for him, and she picks a box that looks unattractive. Worried, Ying Ying shakes the box and wonders what it contains. Just then, the staff excitedly confirms his choice and unseals the box with a spell. However, Ying tries out the dagger but doesn't feel anything special. On checking the contents of the box, Ling asks for a rusty dagger and is unimpressed. Meanwhile, the excited staff congratulates him and refers to the dagger as the soul of dragon blood. Afterwards, Ying and the others leave, and the staff quickly reports to her boss on how she made a profit by selling a gambling box. When she reveals that Ying got a rusted dagger, named the Soul of Dragon, Mei Maizi suddenly gets a nosebleed and collapses while saying that the rusty dagger is very valuable. Sometime later, Yu visits her master, who then asks about her progress with her mission, but when Yu confesses that she failed, her master wonders if her targets are better cultivators than her, or if she never took the mission seriously in the first place. When Yue denies any of this, her master accuses her of colluding with the enemy to unalive him and reveals how he disguised himself as a cleaner to find out everything, surprising Yue. So her master talks about how his disguise strategy has served him well and suddenly casts a spell to obliterate Yue, but she evades the attacks and flees for her life while her master goes after her. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Muzi checks out Ying's new dagger and tosses it back to Ying while asking if that's what he bought with the money. In response, Ying says that Ling chose one for him, so Ling explains that the dagger is a sealed spirit weapon with a dragon's soul sealed inside it. According to legends, a dragon causing chaos was defeated and sealed into the dagger, making the dagger extremely corrosive. Surprised, Ying asks Ling how she knows so much about the dagger, and Ling reveals that she has existed in the world for a long time and has heard of the dagger before. After revealing that the dragon was sealed by Xuan, Ying gets excited about his new dagger and adds that he can't wait to find out what happens when he unleashes the dragon to bite Yue's master. However, Ling advises against this, since such beasts are hostile to humans and uncontrollable. After she adds that summoning the beast will only cause more trouble, Ling states that the dagger must have a special technique and suggests that Ying put his spirit energy on the dagger to see what happens. When Ying tries this, he suddenly gets split into clones. Impressed, the ladies call it the body separation and add that it's just an ordinary technique. After staring for a while, Ling says that she can't tell which of the clones is real, even though she has good cultivation. When Ying makes them vanish, Muzi marvels at the fact that he can now use spirit energy on a whim, and Ying says he's got Ling to thank for that. Suddenly, Yue communicates to Ying through telepathy that her master knows everything and suggests they converge at their planned location. So, Ying informs the other and runs off, but Muzi stops him and asks if it's what he really wants. When Ying confirms this, Muzi takes out the magical treasure she got from the magical store and puts it on while telling him to stay alive. Meanwhile, Yu flees from her master, who then chases her down and accuses him of plotting to kill her a long time ago. In response, her master says she's right and explains that she'll become uncontrollable if she attains the core formation. Quickly, Yue turns to attack him, but the monster puts up a shield and reveals how he saw her intelligence while she was young and figured she would be useful to him in the future. Somewhere else, Ying and the others wait for Ling and go over the plan again, but when he spots dark clouds gathering, he gets a bad feeling. Nearby, Yue's master blocks her path with flames, forcing Yue to stay and fight back. So she draws her spirit sword and prepares to fight, but her master tells her not to bother. Despite this, Yue decides to fight till her last drop. Suddenly, Ying dashes out of a nearby bush and catches the master unawares with a punch. On seeing him, the master immediately figures he's using body separation and feels offended that such a low-level attack could be used on him. So he gets angry and attacks them with a bloody palm spell. Quickly, Muzi and Yue cast a defensive spell to counter the attack, but they can't withstand it. So, Ying clones up and attacks the master from different directions, but fails. Just then, both ladies decide to attack together, but the master protects himself with a shield that blocks out all the attacks. Amused by their tenacity, the master decides to show them the power of core formation, so when Mizu and Yue attack him, the attacks backfire. Seeing this, Ying decides to try out his dagger and dashes towards the master. Suddenly, they clash, and somehow, Ying manages to break through his shield and cuts him with the dagger. Excited that it works, Ying tells the master to prepare to bite the dust. On seeing that he's been marked by Ying's dagger, Huang gets furious, while Ying makes a jest of him for being vulnerable to a dagger despite his level. Huang then grabs Ying by the throat and chokes him, but he soon realizes that it's one of Ying's clones. To his surprise, Ying attacks him from behind, and Huang quickly tries to evade the attack, but gets cut again in his chest by Ying's dagger. Sometime before the battle began, Ling had commented on the awesomeness of Ying's cloning ability, stating that it's hard to tell which one of the copies is real. However, she reveals that Ying's shadow clone trick can only create 2 copies at most and can only last for about 2 hours, but Ying surprises them by saying that he could easily transfer his soul between his clones. Hearing this, Mizu and Ling realize that Ying could easily avoid getting unalived in the battle, while Ying figures they might actually stand a chance. Meanwhile, Huang figures fears that Ying's body separation comes from the dagger, so he secretly activates his fiend art, which pulls them all in and drains their blood and spirit energy. Suddenly, Ying summons Ling, who instantly shows up and warns Huang to leave or get destroyed. Surprise, Huang asks who she is, but she says he's unqualified to know. So she creates a shield to hold Huang and tells Ying and the others to leave since she can only hold him for 2 hours. Meanwhile, Huang tries to figure out Ling's cultivation base, but notices she's not attacking him despite how strong her cultivation is. So he gets to work with his friend Art again and says he knows something is keeping Ling from attacking him. On hearing this, Ling says she can make it happen if he has a death wish. So she almost burns him with some green flames, but Huang backs off. While she holds him off, Ling asks Ling to go with others, while she deals with Huang alone. But Yue says they need to think of a strategy while Huang is trapped. Since Ling isn't attacking him, Huang taunts her and guesses she's a weapon spirit because she calls Ying master. So the ladies suggest they retreat and work out another plan. So Ying agrees and tells Ling to come back to him after holding Huang off for a while. So they all escape into the forest, and after a while, Ling teleports back into Ying's mind. After this, he states that they're almost out of spirit energy and adds that Huang won't be able to tell that they've set a trap for him. A few moments later, Huang finds them and asks if they stopped running to make their final stand. So immediately, he approaches them. Yue activates her flame array to trap Huang, catching him by surprise. Just then, they all jointly attack him, but he calls them fools and blows them all off. Shocked, Yue asks why the flame array has no effect on him, and Huang reveals that he foresaw that Yu would read his fiend art book, so he created fake weaknesses for his fiend art and wrote them down in the book. On hearing this, Yue realizes that her flame array only made him stronger, while Huang brags about his incredible acting skill, which helps him blend in among people and feed on them. When he adds that his skill helps him to trick them as well, Muzi suggests they run, and while they flee into the woods, Huang decides to go after them, but Ying suddenly summons Ling to hold him off while they escape. Annoyed, Huang attacks her, but she holds him off, delaying him long enough to help the others escape. So Haiyan calls on Yue, but Muzi warns her not to listen to him, since he's probably up to some mind games. Just then, Ying reveals his secret on how he slaughtered everyone in her village, and on hearing this, Yue slips and falls from a tree. She then freezes and stops to hear what he has to say. Some years ago, Huang had tracked a snake spirit to Yue's village and unexpectedly found Yue, a young girl taking on her bullies alone for calling her a monster. He realizes she has reached the late stage of qi condensation despite being so young and figures she must have been self-cultivating from birth. Seeing she's a rare spirit, Huang decided to get her and use her to remedy his terrible intelligence. So he acted as a fortune teller to gain attention in the village, but since Yue ignored him, he disguised himself as the snake spirit and massacred the entire village. In addition, he used a grass that drives snake spirits crazy of Yue's friend and handed Yue a knife to finish her off after convincing her that she destroyed the village. As a result of this, Yue became his disciple, and he also got the core of the spirit snake. When he asks Yue how she feels after hearing his story, Yue breaks down in tears and feels bad for hurting her innocent friend. Suddenly, she draws her fire sword and heads back to destroy Huang while Ying calls her back, but she doesn't listen, so he goes after her. Shortly after, Yu finds Huang and attacks him with all she's got, but he simply blocks her attack and says she's still as naive as ever. Suddenly, Huang feels something pierce through him, and he looks down to find Yang's dagger in his chest. So Huang blasts Yue off and says that Ying hid behind Yue to attack him. When he accuses Ying of being evil like him, Ying says that Yu fell for his trap because she's emotional and adds that he deserves to be hurt since he is overconfident. Suddenly, Huang promises to eliminate Ying, who then retrieves his dagger using a controlling art. So Huang decides to show Ying what true controlling art means, so he stretches his hands to the sky. Meanwhile, Zhao enjoys his wine-tasting hobby on his private jet and orders his butler to get more wine. Suddenly, the plane loses power and the pilot opens the door, announcing that the plane will crash soon before jumping off with a parachute. While the others grab parachutes and jump off, Zhao freaks out, so his butler grabs him and a parachute and jumps off the plane. At the same time, Muzi flies into the sky and lands on the plane to cast a spell known as Heaven's Punishment. On the ground, Huang spots the plane falling out of the sky with charges all around it and laughs, thinking his controlling art is working. Just then, he spots Muzi on the plane approaching with her Heaven's Punishment spell and absorbing all the thunder around. So he figures she must be a thunder root spirit and says he would have escaped if she were a higher level cultivator. Suddenly, Muzi crashes the plane into Huang, but he breaks through the ground and escapes the crash, while Ying hurries to save Muzi from sacrificing herself. Amidst the chaos, while Muzi attacks Huang, he manages to counter her attacks and gives Muzi a taste of her own medicine. Luckily, Ying was there to catch her when she fell, but Huang strikes them both with lightning, making Ying scream, but the charm Muzi gave him activates and protects them. Since Huang is bent on ending them for good, Ying asks Muzi to lend her powers and aims her Heavenly Punishment attack at Huang, dealing some damage to him. After losing an arm to the attack, Huang gets furious and decides to show them his most powerful attack, the fiend art he obtained from people's blood called blood absorption. Suddenly, a vortex appears and starts draining blood and spirit energy from each of them. Suddenly, Ling appears and stops the absorption while stating that she can't last for much longer. But Ying figures Ling might be influenced by Huang's spell, so he orders her to get back into the Huntian bead while he handles it. So Ling vanishes, leaving Ying, who then says he won't let Huang hurt Muzi. Amused, Huang asks if he's relying on his favorite dagger and takes control of the dagger to attack Ying. After this, he brags about being the master of controlling art and claims that his power is at its fullest because they hurt his arm and fed more blood to the fiend art. While they all lose spirit energy, Huang decides to get back at Muzi for his arm and controls her to grab her neck. Seeing this, Ying hurries to rescue her, but not before Huang snaps her neck like a twig. When he dumps her body, Ying attacks him with all he's got, but Huang promises to go easy on him when he's done absorbing his spirit energy. He then blasts Ying off, but luckily, Ying finds his dagger again. So he picks the dagger and suddenly unleashes his wings to fly, taking on a new form as he cuts his arm and lets out some blood to feed the vortex. However, Ying soon takes control of the vortex, and it starts absorbing Huang's blood instead. Shocked to see this, Huang freaks out while Ying explains that it's the effect of the soul of the dragon blood. So the fiend art stops, and Yue suddenly gets up to attack Huang with her flaming lasso, which pierces through his hand, but he manages to knock her off. Suddenly, Huang reactivates his fiend art, but this time, Ying thwarts it before dashing towards him. Meanwhile, Huang notices his body parts rotting, but keeps fighting. He then breaks open the floor and launches rocks at Ying to keep him from approaching him, but Ying evades the rocks. Suddenly, Huang boxes Ying in with many rocks, but to his surprise, Ying breaks out of the rock prison and lunges towards him at a tremendous speed, driving the dagger through him. Suddenly, Huang goes up in flames and says that his senior apprentice will avenge him. Before he vanishes, Huang leaves a curse and states that they'll all live in fear, while Yue feels accomplished for taking her revenge. Meanwhile, Ying heads over to Muzi and calls on an elder to ask if he's seen enough. Just then, the eye in the sky appears and is surprised that Ying is aware of its existence. So Ying explains that when Muzi explored his consciousness, he could feel some other power watching, although he wasn't sure of its purpose. The eye then asks why he's acknowledging its purpose, and Ying says it's because he thinks it can save Muzi. When he says that life will be meaningless without Muzi, the eye says he never thought Ying could be foolishly sentimental and adds that cultivators can always be saved as long as they still have a little life left. After this, the eye asks Ying why he should help him, and Ying promises to meet any demand to save Muzi. Just then, the eye says it has been watching Ying to get his Huntian bead. So Ying summons the bead and offers it to the eye, but the eye laughs and says it won't need Ying if he could take the beads. So Ying asks the eye how he'll get it, and the eye reveals that it's in a different dimension. He then tells Ying to bring the bead to him in 3 years' time, but when Ying asks for its location, the eye asks him to find the answer for himself, since it's restricted from revealing its location by some higher powers. After this, Ying asks what would happen if he fails to meet up with his end of the bargain, and the eye states that he can easily unalive Muzi just as easily as he can save her. He then takes up Muzi's body in a cloud while Ying vows to find the eye's location. The eye then promises to fix Muzi and tells him not to get in the way. Meanwhile, Zhao checks out the crash site of his plane, and when he whines about it, his butler suggests that he buy a new one. Curious, Zhao asks how much planes cost, and in response, the butler says he could get one for 5 million. So, Zhao orders him to get more planes since they're so cheap. Afterwards, the butler asks Zhao how they'll get home, and a few moments later, Zhao rides on his shoulder while screaming about how fun it is to feel like he's running in the wind. Suddenly, he closes his eyes and stretches out his hands while imagining himself grabbing some D-cup fondle orbs. He collides with a tree branch and crashes into the ground. Sometime later, Muzi leads Ying, who's blindfolded, through the woods, and after a while of walking, he asks if they've arrived. In response, Muzi tells him to be patient, but Ying says she might be leading him to a slaughterhouse for all he knows. So Muzi tells him to go back if he's scared, but for the hope of spreading legs under a tree, Ying decides to see the quest to the finish. Muzi then drags him along and shortly after, asks him to take off his blindfold. Just then, Ying realizes they're at a beautiful flowery field where they can make all the noises without anyone hearing. So they sit under a tree while Muzi explains that it's her mother's favorite spot for picnics and mother-daughter talks. She reveals that her mother taught her how to find and keep a good husband, and leans in to ask Ying if he'd like to see her husband-keeping skills. When she reveals that she knows 1,000 ways to keep him satisfied, Ying stares at her lips while she asks if he'd like a wild fight. Hearing this, Ying's imaginations run wild, so he says he'd like to try. But when Muzi draws her real sword, he freaks out and says he had a different kind of fight in mind. Surprised, Muzi asks what he means and leans on his chest while saying she can give him if he asks. So Ying decides to be a sweet boy and reassures Muzi that she'll never be alone or fight anymore. So Muzi says she still has to do something and leans in to take back the first kiss he stole from her. Would you rather be stacked like Zhao or be the ladies' magnet like Ying? Let's know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more videos like this, like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.